Ready?
Almost.
Almost? Okay.
It's loading.
Okay, cool.
Tú empiezas, María, ¿no?
Sí, empiezo yo. Ready?
So we are live now.
Almost? Okay.
It's loading.
Okay, cool. Okay, I will start. I think we are live already. So welcome everyone. My name is Maria Rengifo, and I'm very happy to welcome you to this keynote conference that will be talking about electric mobility. We'll have two presentations, one from Hernán Pajaro and one from Alan Wagenheimer. We'll start with Hernán Pajaro. He is a consultant and product development lead at BABLE. He holds an European Joint Master's degree in Management and Engineering of Energy and Environment from the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm and the Polytechnic University of Madrid. And over the past year has been guiding cities' efforts to adopt tech solutions to drive sustainability, energy efficiency, and climate resilience in cities. So welcome to you, Hernan. You can start.
Thank you very much, Maria. Can you all see my screen? You can see my screen, right? Yes.
Right.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining today. Also, Maria gave a very good introduction about myself. But today I'm very happy to be presenting about the European green and digital transformation of urban mobility, where I'll be sharing some best practices of already implemented projects across cities in Europe, and also drawing some key lessons and conclusions. So without further ado, I would like to start first by setting the context of the European mobility landscape with some key facts and figures. First, if we look at the transport sector, it's actually the only sector that has increased its emissions since 1990. All other sectors have been able to decrease their emission. For example, the whole production industry have been able to cut their emissions by half, and all other sectors like agriculture, residential, and even energy production, they've been able to reduce their emissions by 25%. And in contrast, the transport sector has increased emissions by 25% in average, more or less, since 1990. That makes the transport sector a very crucial sector for the European Commission to really achieve the very ambitious climate targets they have set for themselves. Looking at these emissions, 72% of those comes directly from road transport. The rest comes from either aviation, marine, water navigation, or also railroads. And from these 72% of emissions, actually 60% comes from cars, mostly from personal use cars. And this is a key metric or key important fact for cities, mostly because, and it sounds stupid, but cars are found in cities. So urban planning is a very key aspect when it comes to influencing the amount of emissions that come from cars, because cities have the power and influence to change, for example, some behavioral patterns in terms of the use of different kind of modes of transportation. And a reflection of this, for example, is the fact that 50% of public spaces are actually used for streets and highways in cities. That means that road transport still is a significant way of transportation for a lot of people. And that's also a proof that transport is actually the second largest area of expenditure for European households. So tackling different kind of urban mobility challenges do not only have an influence on the environment, but also it can have an influence on the economy. And talking about the economy, the transport sector as a whole contributes to 5% of the European GDP and directly employs around 10 million workers. And an interesting fact is that 130 billion euros a year are actually lost due to congestion, which is actually a very interesting and kind of unexpected link between urban mobility and the economy as a whole. So in light of all these challenges, the European Commission has set for themselves very ambitious goals and probably the most ambitious so far in terms of sustainable and smart mobility with their strategy that was recently published during the pandemic after the signature of the new Green Deal. And here they set actually a lot of objectives, but mostly there are 3 pillars: sustainable mobility, anything that has to do with reducing emissions and improving mobility in a more sustainable way; smart mobility, anything that has to do with data and new kind of digital technologies and the digitalization of the sector; and third, the resilient mobility in terms of dealing with the impacts that the COVID-19 pandemic had for the whole transport sector. But probably the most important target of all is the 90% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions in the whole transport sector by 2050. And yes, we just discussed that the transport sector was the only sector that didn't manage to really reduce their emissions. And now we're setting all these targets that are very ambitious, mostly because 2050 is actually closer to us than it was 1990. So yes, we may be old, but what this says is that we don't really have too much time to implement all these actions. So even though that there is a strong political commitment from the top level among all the EU members, it is important that this action is taken from all different kind of parties and also stakeholders in Europe. So that's why I want to show to you today some interesting solutions that cities across Europe have been implemented, piloting and trialing to showcase what are those changes that are or actions that are needed to really achieve these targets. And I purposely won't share with you the very, let's say, sophisticated or high-tech solutions. On the contrary, I would like to show you some really low-hanging fruits where they use different, probably old-century technologies such as bikes, and with a little digital twist and new ways of understanding and offering service, how all these things can really create an impact in the short and medium term, which is something that we are actually looking for. So let me start. I will have some 8 examples, I think, but I will go very quickly. But please, if you have any questions, just let me know at the end of the presentation. So I would like to start with a very small neighborhood in London, UK. It's called Greenwich because the borough actually wanted to encourage a shift to a more sustainable mobility modes. So that's why they took the initiative and trial a new electric bike sharing scheme, as well as a rental model to really incentivize or encourage the uptake of e-bikes. So residents pay only £10 per month. They could really use the bike for the entire month. And also because of a GPS tracking system, they could track their own journeys. But the most important part of it is that the borough could actually understand, because of these data insights, how the users of the bikes were actually behaving and how they were moving in the city. So the results of this test showed that 60% of e-bike journeys were actually made by people who would normally use cars 3 times a week, which could represent a significant decrease in terms of emissions and in terms of personal carbon footprint, for example. And the success of this program would actually lead to the expansion of more e-vehicle and were made accessible for even a greater geographical area. So a key takeaway for this is how a simple solution like this, when it is only about facilitating access to low emission modes of transport, could really have an impact, and how you can inform those decisions with studying different kind of user needs through data. Another example, a little bit more complex in terms of scope and scale of the project, was in Milan, Italy, with a shared electric mobility system. So they had, of course, problems with high rates of car ownership that led to a lot of pollution, a lot of congestion, etc. So they wanted to really deploy a shared electric mobility system by having a lot of charging station, electric cars, e-bikes, and even smart parking solutions. But probably what is good about, or what is worth highlighting about this particular project is that they wanted to make available this shared electric service not only for people, but also for commercial operators, for businesses. So they roll out this e-logistic kind of services where they enable different kind of deliveries with zero emission electric vehicles, even 2 cargo bikes in a specific dense areas in the city, where they also had different kind of micro hubs for deliveries. And they also trial similarly different type of off-peak or even night deliveries to see, for example, how they could reduce these emissions during the day. What is worth highlighting about this project is the combination of these solutions actually created a more attractive, more variety of offer in terms of sustainable transport modes or options that promoted change in behavior in terms of the users in the city and also in terms of the businesses, so overall reducing emissions. And an important aspect of this was also the fact that they could respond to different changes in the demand of e-commerce. We know how the COVID pandemic really changed our online shopping. I call myself up for that, but these had profound impacts on emissions and how, for example, congestion works in the city. So these kind of solutions actually represent a way of making it more flexible and also responding to these differences in demand. And we, of course, cannot talk about bikes without talking about bikeways. So because of the pandemic, several cities in Europe started creating or deploying new bike lanes in their cities. Some of them were more permanent, some of them were more provisional. However, before COVID times, in a survey, it was found that inefficient or inexistent bike lanes were some of the most, by 1/4 of the cities, were some of the most important challenges in terms of urban mobility. So that's one of the drivers of this for the COVID pandemic. However, the quality of the cycling infrastructure was very different from city to city. Some were, wide lanes with very well connected networks, and others were really narrow lanes with, some of them ending abruptly in the middle of a traffic intersection, and that had an impact on how the public really used this bike infrastructure. So when it comes to really expanding a cycling infrastructure, it is very important for cities to tackle this challenge of lack of information, for example, on the usage of these bike lanes and also bike journeys. So it is important to assess how effective these are when it comes to expanding a network where it's in long term or just pop-up lanes. So these changes, so these changes were actually very impactful, for example, in terms of inclusion. For example, in Toronto, in last June, there was approved of 40 kilometers of new bike lanes. That was one of the largest so far. And of those 8 projects, 5 were actually located in gentrified urban cores, and 2 of them actually were going along the way of a subway line. So that actually makes no sense. And none of those new implemented bike lanes were found in neighborhoods with the highest rate of COVID-19 infection. So that's an important part of all this, is how we can really plan and deliver very good bike infrastructure. So the length of this bike network is not as important as it is the type of infrastructure, the connection with the different areas of the city, and also the correct planning of it is kind of like a key fundamental aspect of this. Now, I also want to introduce you something more on the digital side. is this sustainable mobility app called Luftwasser in Berlin, which has a more conventional concept of a mobility app that kind of allows users to plan their own journeys through different means of transportation. However, it has a little bit of a twist because it has an extended focus on more sustainable local offers, and it also adds an important aspect related to public health. For example, they were collecting information from different kind of air monitoring sensors and integrated this information in the route planning so that users were offered different alternative routes for walking or cycling or any other kind of modes of transportation in areas where air pollution were the highest. So this tracking function were also combined or even went a little bit of a step forward because it didn't allow only users to track their own personal carbon footprint, but they also created a game about it to raise awareness and also to really make users understand what is that link between their own mobility behaviors and also the environmental pollution that they cause. So using data in more creative ways is an important aspect of this. So using this carrot to incentivize sustainable mobility patterns for different for the citizens is actually proven very good. For example, the government in Catalonia launched a similar functionality where they allow users to understand different kind of occupancy rates for the buses. So when the bus was too crowded, they encouraged the user, for example, to use a different kind of modes of transportation. So for example, bike lanes, etc. So this kind of new ways of using information that you have is what we can take out of this example. Now, next example is a project that we actually did in Bielefeld in Germany, where during COVID, they wanted to really redefine some of the public spaces. They wanted to increase pedestrian areas and also to provide more space to meet physically, to meet all these distance requirements, etc., and also to promote more active modes of transportation. What they did is that they took out some of the parking places and some other different areas that were allocated to motorized traffic, and they increased outdoor spaces for shop, restaurants, but also they decided to engage with the citizens and also with the local businesses to see, for example, how these urban spaces could be repurposed. So they really created grassroots projects with they even invited artists, etc., to really figure out a way of increasing the quality of stay in these areas. So in promoting or attracting more visitors to the area and increasing the length of stay so that businesses can benefit from it. They also implemented some different kind of digital solutions to track different flows of users and target different kind of modes of transportation for the different kind of users that came to the place. So citizen and stakeholder participation from the outset can be a good aspect when it comes to redefining and reclaiming public space. And finally, my last example, it's on-demand mobility for public transportation in Hamburg, also in this theme of inclusion. The objective was to strengthen public transport in the outskirts areas of the city and improve connection to the city center. So they created these on-demand shuttles that can be booked via an app and also were fully integrated with the entire Hamburg public transportation system. They also have this ride pooling functionality that merge similar routes in real times. Up to 6 people could be transported together. And because of this collection of data that this app enabled, they were able to optimize some of the different routes and even more so inform decisions on next projects or future projects in terms of infrastructure. As a result, the app was downloaded more than 34,000 times and 1.4 million kilometers have been traveled. So really providing alternative to those areas that are more disconnected could actually have a big impact in terms of the emissions that are felt in the city. So with these examples, what I intended to show is that change is possible and it's already happening in cities, and it doesn't have to be such a really technological, high-tech solution. So as a conclusion, I would like to, give some key lessons learned, kind of like a summarizing of all this, the important part of using data insights to increase the level of responsiveness, to increase the resiliency of cities and the system of transportation, for example, to respond to different changes that the COVID pandemic brought. We know that during the pandemic, different kind of mobility providers had struggled with defining different schedules, because there were no more peak times, the travel patterns changed, so it was really hard to find the most efficient way, not only in terms of fuel, but also in terms of emission, how that could really impact. Another important aspect is the dense network of multimodal mobility hubs. So cities really lack space for having big infrastructure projects. So a good mobility infrastructure should require as little space as possible, while offering as much mobility as possible, but particularly for those areas with high urban density. And one way of doing that is implementing a lot of mobility as a service solutions, as I showed before. So having these digital apps, it's a good way of not, deploying really, really costly infrastructure in cities. Also making public transport more attractive and increasing the high quality of the infrastructure, changing the way urban planning is made, making more informed decisions, moving from car-centric to more active and low-emission modes of transportation. Also, probably now that electric vehicles would eventually increase in Latin America, it's important to, for example, know where to position those EV charging stations, and also use different kind of apps for smart parking to really promote this. And finally, demonstrate the positive links between, all these efforts in terms of improving pedestrian circulation and also reducing traffic. And finally, so really plan for services that are aimed for people, for the most vulnerable people of the city. So maybe one of the final key takeaways is I want to show you this example. This is Berlin. And if you see the picture from above, in terms of the differences in colors of the street light, you could really draw a line where the Berlin Wall was, just by looking at this. And this has to do with how the history of Berlin was, and how the different kind of decisions that were made in the city had an impact that could be seen in the present day. So one of the key messages right now is that today's planning, urban decisions really determine or shape the city for decades to come. In other words, the decisions that we make today would limit the decisions that we'll be able to make in the future. And with this, I would like to end my presentation. Sorry for being too quick on this, but I wanted to cover a lot of these examples and give you a lot of insights. So if you want more examples, please feel free to visit BABLE webpage. We have a platform with around 350 use cases like this in all different sectors, not only in mobility, but also feel free to just contact me if you have any questions, or if you want to further this discussion. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hernan. That was great, really. So we don't have any questions for now from the attendees, but if any of you just want to ask something to Hernan, feel free to contact him, feel free to write to him. You can use the Hubilo platform for this, or you can use his email for this. Now I'm going to introduce the other speaker. He is Alan Bachenheimer. He's an industrial engineer with solid experience in 4.0 industries and new automotive technologies. And for the last 4 years, he has worked as National Technical Coordinator and Specialized Automotive Expert for Unido in a cooperation project financed by the Korean government. So welcome, Alan, and we are really happy to have you here, and you can start your presentation right now. Alan? I don't see Alan. Alan, if you're talking, I cannot hear you.
Okay, now can you hear me? Yes?
Now I can hear you. Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
amazing.
okay, so I will,
Oh.
I will use this. Okay, so if you can hear me, I will use the camera microphone. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about the ACES mega trends. This is an automotive industry trend, and those trends are transforming the automotive industry and the future's mobility. So we'll have a overview of what is this, what is ACES, and each of those trends. Okay, so first I will just introduce myself. As Maria said, I've been working as a national technical coordinator in the UNIDO, United Nations Industrial Development Organization, and I have been working my whole life in the automotive industry in Europe mostly. In Idiada, there is a testing center in Spain, also in Volkswagen Group, in different projects in the Volkswagen Group all over Europe, and also here in Colombia as a technical road safety consultant. So because of that, I'm going to talk about this industry and what is we can expect for this industry in next years. So as an introduction, I will like to show you what is the automotive industry in Colombia, let's say Latin America, in 2021. Those pictures actually are in the left. I have taken those pictures on some of my visits to the industry, and this is how it looks like, more or less. But in Europe and worldwide, the global automotive industry looks like different. And as you can see, it looks like more like the pictures on your right. So this is more or less what is ACES, and these trends are changing the industry in a way that it hasn't changed in the last 100 years. So let's talk about, well, what is a car, or what was a car? The car in the 70s and the 80s was a car with mechanics, a lot of welding, of course, electricity, and some electronics in the 90s. In the 90s and the 2000s, the car started to have more electronics, some CAN bus to just the car communicate each other with different computers inside the car. It has some basic ADAS, that is advanced driver assistance systems, and also some basic infotainment. So right now, in 2020, 2021, what is a car? A car is a car that is quite electrified. We have this trend growing, and some hybrid cars, of course, with some sensors, vehicle operating systems, running applications, protocols, servers, firewalls, local networks. We have also electronic actuators, automatic braking, emergency braking, some fatigue cameras, automatic parking, ADAS, as I say, and some connectivity. So right now we can find a connected car. Actually, at this point in the US, 91% of the cars that are sold in the US are connected cars. So this is something that is a trend. Of course, in Latin America and Colombia, we are quite behind, but this is a car worldwide, or what you can expect from a car currently. So what will be a car? Let's say in the next decade. The car will be a smart and hyper-connected car, will be a network of wheels, will be an always connected car with B2B. We will talk about that later on. That's vehicle to vehicle, B2I, B2X. We'll have artificial intelligence, deep learning, will be a car that drives by itself. You have mobile apps for remote management of the car. We'll have vehicle and driver authentication, full electrification of the cars, and mobility or transport as a service. So we'll talk about that also in the next slides. So within 10 years, urban transportation is likely to be dominated by autonomous, connected, electric, shared, and smart vehicles. This is called ACES, or the ACES megatrends. So ACES comes from A from autonomous, C from connected, E from electric or electrification, and S, someone says shared, someone says smart. Anyhow, shared is inside smart mobility services. So we can say, let's say, smart mobility cars. Okay, so as you can see, worldwide, the big brands has been doing some acquisitions lately, investments, has some subsidiary brands or some partnerships with this type of companies, these ACES companies. So as you can see, GM, Volvo, Toyota, Daimler, Volkswagen, BMW, Hyundai, they have been doing some partnerships or acquisitions with brands like NVIDIA, like Lyft, like Waymo. Waymo is an autonomous car company, Google also, and so on. So this is something that is a trend, and the car industry is moving forward that direction. So if you want to see what's going on in a segment or in an industry, you have to see where the investments goes. So a clear trend in the challenge of technology companies to traditional automotive companies is in mobility. So because non-automotive companies, along with venture investors and private equity firms, are responsible for more than 90% of the mobility investments in 2018. And that's something that is growing every year. So we are seeing that many companies that hasn't been here in the automotive industry are now investing on the automotive industry. We have here the top 10 of the technology cluster that have received investment. The biggest one, at least by 2019, was e-hailing. We'll talk about that later. Anyhow, there's a lot of investments going on in batteries, electric vehicles and charging infrastructure, AV software mapping and telematics and so on. So as an example that we have the Grab. It is a Southeast Asian ride-hailing service. They have received $2 billion in new capital from investors such as Toyota, which contributed with $1 billion, and SoftBank. They are investors also in Rappi here in Colombia, and they have invested $500 million. Grab's current value exceeds $10 billion. So this is something that is moving a lot of money worldwide. Also, another example on investments and valuation, it is Tesla. Tesla in 2020, their valuation was $555 billion, and it was 2 times more valuable than the second traditional OEM that was Toyota at that point. This is something that has been moving, the last year. But anyhow, this is a trend, and this is something that remains quite the same. But this is a graphic that, of course, is amazing because Tesla is being here about 15 years, and Toyota, of course, decades, and the rest of those brands also decades. And Tesla produced, at that point, I think 2020, they were producing 500,000 cars. Toyota were producing 80 million cars, and the Tesla valuation was, of course, way higher than Toyota. So this is something that is showing us where the trends in the automotive industry and the mobility industry goes. Okay, let me see. Question from okay, no, I just looking for the chat. Okay, so let's continue. One of the successful cases of this investment and ecosystem is Israel. Israel mobility landscape is really big. As you can see, there's a lot of brands here with different type of services. Of course, all of those services are within the ACES megatrends. And Israel don't produce cars. They don't produce. I was talking with one guy from Model I, that is the biggest company in Israel in the automotive industry. They produce a camera and semiconductors for autonomous vehicles, and they say we don't produce a single part of the automotive of a car. Anyhow, we have one of the biggest investments worldwide. So this is something that Latin America must have pay attention, because this is all software, this is all technology, and we can bet on that. This is soft investment, soft skills. We have to invest in a big factory and bring a lot of production and have logistics. This is something really soft and that we in Latin America we can take advantage. So this is something that we have to see in the future and to bet as countries and as companies related to the automotive industry. And professionals, of course, that are looking to organize and work on different fields. So let's start talking about the ACEs, mega trends. Let's talk about the first one, the A, that is autonomous vehicles. So what are autonomous vehicles? So if we look at the news, we will think about a Google car, that is one in the picture here, or Tesla, that you have seen some videos of Tesla driving by itself. But in reality, autonomous vehicles has been around in many forms for a long time. One of the earliest forms of autonomous vehicles is the elevator. You use it every day and you know, think about it. Also, autonomous vehicles has been part of transportation in many places. In some airports worldwide, you can find a train or even trains that just drives by itself. And of course, military and aviation has been very active on this field. Most of the planes we take at some point, they are just flying by itself, just as an autonomous, let's say, airplane. So this is something that is getting to the cars that we use every day. So there's 5 levels of autonomous. It has been defined by the SAE. Maybe you have heard about that the X car or Tesla has 2 or 3 level, or we're going to the 3rd level or 4th level in the next years. So I'm going to explain a little bit what is this, what does each level. So 0, of course, is no automation. So regular car, the one that you guys use every day. The first level is driver assistance. So the car can just drive the steering, just move the steering a little bit and accelerate or decelerate, and that's it. The human does everything else. The second level is partial automation. So the system does actually all the steering and all the acceleration or deceleration, but the human has to monitor the driving. So this is a partial of the initial, let's say, levels. There's a human driver that monitors the driving environment and the car does some stuff. So with the level 3, we start with automatic driving systems, and then the third one is the conditional automation. So the car drives, also monitor the environment. It has some cameras, some sensors, but anyhow, the human is there to intervene on request. And Tesla is between 2nd and 3rd level right now. So we have, anyhow, the hardware is prepared for the 5th level. That's what Tesla says. So we have the 4th level is high automation. So the system or the car is driving, steering, using the steering, accelerate, also monitor the environment, and also doing some dynamic driving tasks. For example, brake, if there is someone in front of the car or a car just passed over the car, so it just brakes automatically. And then the 5th one is just the car driving by itself. You don't need any steering wheel. You will sit like in the back of the car or in an airplane or bus and just relax and get to the destination. So that's the levels. We have heard about those, but maybe having just know exactly what is which level. So this is pretty interesting to know. Okay, so on autonomous vehicles, we also have, of course, some enablers that are sensors and semiconductors. We have cameras, we have lidars like laser radars and radars also, and they enable V2X, V2G, V2V. We'll talk about that in next slides, okay? Also, in the autonomous vehicle industry, we have some autonomous solutions. And the cars, as I say, they keep the lane, you know, driving in an autobahn or a highway. We have brake assistant, we have blind spot indication, that is cruise control, parking assistant. So this is something that also there are many companies doing that worldwide, and of course many big OEMs doing partnerships with those companies that are developing that technologies. So on the autonomous vehicles, we also need the cities. We also need the city infrastructure, and we need that the cars not only drive by itself, but also communicate with different cars. So we have what is called V2I, that is vehicle to infrastructure. So the car is talking directly with all the city infrastructure, and this is quite what we are looking for in a smart city, at least on the automotive aspect. We have also B2B, that is vehicle talking with different vehicles, and there are different protocols. 5G, the cellular network 5G or networks are enabling this also B2B possibilities. And we have B2N, vehicle to network. That's a connected car talking with a network that goes to a server, and thus also exchange some information, of course, to improve the autonomous driving. So that's a must. And this B2X, that is vehicle to everything. So it is quite what we talked before, everything together. Okay, so let's talk now about connectivity. Connectivity is another enabler of autonomous vehicles, and it is also has its own services and advantages. Of course, a connected vehicle is a safety and secure vehicle. It has infotainment. It does diagnosis of the car, remote diagnosis, and also alerts of the vehicle situation. It has navigation and traffic in real time, of course. I think you use that actually, but from your smartphone, for example, Waze. By the way, Waze is an Israeli company. You can also have some important services with a connected vehicle, like a usage-based insurance, that is a pay per mile. So if you move your car, you will pay. If you move your car, you will pay the insurance. So this is interesting. Of course, most of us that had cars in the pandemic had the car just in the garage, just paying an insurance and without moving the car. So this is something interesting. Driver assistance, of course. Road charging infrastructure, communication with the infrastructure, and also reserving spots to charge vehicles. This is something that is allowed by the connected vehicle and connectivity. And let's say a mobile office. So this is a main bet for global OEMs. For example, Volkswagen helps this. The chairman of Volkswagen, he say in a letter to their shareholders, Volkswagen shareholders, the transformation of the car will go far beyond driving. It is becoming a highly complex and connected device, like a tablet on wheels, if you will. So this is something that Volkswagen and German and worldwide brands are betting right now. For example, also BMW, also chairman, in 2018, also 4 years ago, actually, said, our goal remains to be a driving force and innovator capable of driving individual mobility into a new era for our customers, a sustainable, connected, and autonomous era. So this is something that in 2018 they were talking about, and now you're seeing all the results of this. Everyone is betting on this on this industry. So now let's talk about the electrification. So the E of ACES. Electric cars are growing and growing worldwide, as you may hear somewhere in the news. So by 2018, for example, the penetration or percentage of total vehicle sales, EV versus EV, was low. The EV were like 3% of the total sales, or 8% or 2%. Germany 2%, Austria 2.5%, China 4.4%, Sweden 8%. But we had Norway. The case of Norway, they were half of the cars sold on 2018 was electric vehicles. And today, on let's say last month or the last months in August, let's say for example August 2021, Norway had Actually, 88% of electric vehicles, they sold 88% of the total of vehicles were electric vehicles. And some 50% additionally was plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. So Norway has gone now through this total transformation, and actually big brands worldwide like Audi, Mini, they have been talking about total full electric cars on 2025, 2030, and as you hear, the European Union has also had set 2040 as the date or the year where they won't allow combustion cars sold on their market. So global sales are growing a lot. We have this graphic here in the US, 69% growth, in Europe 57%, in China 326%. There's a lot of sales. Tesla, let's say, is leading. 25% of the cars sold worldwide are electric cars are Tesla. We have different brands in China also, Volkswagen Group, and different other brands.
Sorry, Alan.
Yeah.
Just to let you know that you have 4 minutes left. Okay.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Maria. Okay, so in electric vehicles, we have different vehicles. We have hybrids, of course, plug-in hybrids vehicles, full battery vehicles, extended range electric vehicles, and fuel cell electric vehicles. So this is a different type of vehicles that use electricity in some way to move the car. Also, batteries are really important, are growing. Right now, we are getting to the point that a battery costs the same, or a car with batteries cost the same as a regular car. So this is a break point for everyone. And also, there's a lot of infrastructure going on, and investments and improvements, of course, to charge cars. So let's talk about the last one, the S, the smart mobility services. Smart cities in the context of ACES, because you can talk about it in different contexts, like the presentation before me. It refers to cities that their infrastructure can communicate with the vehicles with different technologies, enabling their use, the optimization of the mobility, and of course the road safety through them. So we have different sub-industries here, ride-hailing, we talk about it. It is a big one of the biggest investments last years. We have micromobility, this is the last mile mobility. We have, as you can see, these scooters all over the cities, Lime, Bird, Bolt, Deerboy, and they have received a lot of investments. And of course, they're growing in Colombia. They're gone now, pandemic help. Anyhow, this is a trend to have different types of mobility, multimodal mobility. And we have in the last interesting is that there are some examples. There's more, let's say, sub-industries or examples of smart mobility in the industries, in the cities. But enhanced ownership is something interesting because the idea is that with fully automotive vehicles, most of the cars or people moving around are served by TaaS, Transport as a Service. Because right now subscription models are shaping the market, you know, Spotify, Netflix, Amazon Prime, HelloFresh, and what about the Netflix for vehicles? And this is something that is growing right now. We have all the brands are betting on this. We have BMW with Access, Volvo with Care, Android with Carpe, Nissan with Switch, and they know that they are not going to sell any more cars to customers at some point. They will offer the service, so they want to be the one interacting with the customer and not only just producing the car. So this is something interesting because not only does allow the customer to personalize their day, because with one subscription, maybe you can have a sport car on the weekends, you take a sport car and then go to another city and take a car, not only relate with your car in your city, or also you can have a van if you needed a van for a weekday, or a small car just to go to the office, like a smart, the one that is in the picture below. So this is an overview of the ACES trends. I hope you guys like it, and I hope you guys are getting interested on this field. This is something that I've been working my whole life. So I just wanted to transmit to you what is going on, what's the next 10 years of the automotive industry and the mobility worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alan. We do have a question for you. This is from Jose David. He's asking which strategies are nowadays implemented to improve the connectivity of an autonomous car in terms of security.
Yeah.
So he's concerned about that if still a bank account can be hacked, like what happens if the functions of an autonomous car get overridden?
Yeah, actually, there's the United Nations has some regulations. Let's say they regulate the braking and the seat belts. Right now, at this point, they're regulating how the updates of the car are doing over the air. What's the encryption of the software, and what's the how not hackable can be a car, because a connected car just drive it by someone, you know, that the one don't want to use it just a regular car, but as a, let's say, a weapon. Maybe it is something very important. So the brands are using different technologies, and the UN are also doing some regulations about this, and all cars has to comply with that. So this is something that is actually addressing, everyone in the industry is addressing right now, the security of the cars. And as you see, you don't see much banks hacked. There's some, but so they're using, let's say, the same technology of actually the banks, and maybe the crypto industry is using to keep safe the vehicles. Thanks.
Cool, thank you, Alan. And now I'd like to ask some questions for Hernan that I did not have the chance to see before. So Hernan, if you are still there.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Perfect.
So we have two questions for you. One is from Jose David Triana. He's asking, what is a key factor encouraging governments to provide an appropriate infrastructure to make a faster transition towards electrical mobility in Latin America?
Yeah, sorry, I tried to answer the question on the chat, but apparently it just got short. But as I said in the first part of the response, it's really important to understand or acknowledge that the context is quite different from Latin America to Europe. So probably having that climate reduction or sustainability as a driving factor is not much as a driving factor as other could be. And it's important to understand that political commitment drives implementation, not only because a strong political commitment could really shape the strategies, shape the plans, and shape the budget allocation, but it can also send some signals to the market and to other stakeholders to really understand what is the type of mobility landscape that you would like in your city. So in that sense, without a political commitment, it would be really difficult to really drive these things fast. One of the key probably factors that we could look at is maybe look at sustainability from a more wider perspective. So, the sustainability is not only reducing emissions, but linking that to different kind of issues that are more prevalent in Latin America, like in terms of mobility, for example. We have affordability, accessibility, security, and all these issues that comes with the transportation. So looking at those factors, linking those with sustainable goals, and see, for example, how involving citizens, or how, kind of this pressure from the citizens themselves could really drive these things. But one of the really key aspects of successful mobility projects here in Europe, especially these kind of more transformative projects, is definite political commitment. So that's kind of like one cornerstone on this.
Okay, that was amazing. I think the other question is pretty similar. He's asking this, but for Bolivia, and if you know any experience of this happening in Latin America.
Yeah, so I must admit that I don't know as much as I would like to from initiative in Latin America. However, the Morgenstadt Global Smart City Initiative, we are actually a spin-off of the Morgenstadt Innovation Network, and they created this new initiative for global cities to try to tackle different aspects, different urban challenges for cities across the globe. They do have some interesting experiences and projects in countries like Mexico and Peru. I will share the link with you in the chat. I encourage you to read the reports and read the interviews and webinars and all the materials they have on those specific cities in Mexico and Peru. They focus a lot on sustainable urban development. We use the same framework for our projects here in Europe, and they focus a lot on mobility, energy, resiliency, etc. All these kind of problems that comes along with sustainable urban development. So they are doing some great work there. And if you are very interested, I can also put you in direct contact with them. So just let me know and I will make that connection if you want.
Okay, cool. I think that would be all. I just wanted to thank you both. Like this was really insightful and really like motivational if someone wants to know more about this field. So thank you so much, Hernan. Thank you so much, Alan. And to all the attendees, feel free to explore the platforms we have, because we have workshops, we have sessions, conferences, we have also lunch rooms if you want to do like networking. So please feel free to explore the platform, to go to the chat, to try to chat with other people. Like there are a lot of things to do, and we're very happy to have you here. And yeah, thank you again, Alan and Hernan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Thanks for
Bye-bye.
having me. Bye.